May I introduce you to Professor Karanja, who is the CEO of Greenbelt Movement Kenya. He is walking in the shoes of the late Professor Wangari Maathai to see that her legacy of conserving the environment is continued. Nice to have you there.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be on GBS.
Nice.
Yes.
Professor, now on Greenbelt Movement, it has been sung in the media, it is on papers, it is on record, but only the learned people may understand the Greenbelt Movement, but the normal Mwananchi may not understand. In a simple term, can you please tell us what is Greenbelt Movement?
The Greenbelt Movement is truly a movement of people across Kenya and around the world who actually support conservation and protection of our environment. Particularly in Kenya, our groups are spread all over the country. They raise seedlings, they plant trees on farm, they plant trees in the forest, they rehabilitate degraded parts of the forest, and they are custodians of our environment. We have a membership across the country of 4,000 tree nursery groups, each representing about 20 to 30 people. So we are a movement for the protection and conservation of our environment with special emphasis on tree planting and the protection of our forests. Yes.
People perceive that a green movement is where you operate on an activism format. For example, people have read you maybe protesting about certain matters. Yes. When does your movement call for maybe activism?
Sometimes you'll hear Greenbelt Movement making very serious noises to ensure that the government and all those concerns are aware that we should not be doing certain things that are being done irregularly and in some cases illegally by building or using wetlands in the wrong way, or diverting rivers, for example, or because rivers is a public resource. Nobody can own a river. Yeah? So that's why we ask our people to protect the river, to protect water, so that water can move ably but easily without interfering with it, damming it, or illegal obstruction of water, or concreting it. You know, if you allow the river to run too fast, you're also not helping nature, because the river should flow in its own speed, so that as it flows, it provides water downstream to those who live downstream, and as it flows, it meanders around and allows that water to seep into the underground water aquifers. Now, when the city of Nairobi concretizes all its rivers, it means the rivers are leaving no water in Nairobi. They are rushing all the way to the coast. The fish don't need more water. We need the water here.
Sure. I believe the Greenbelt Movement works under 6 principles. One of them is the afforestation. Yes. And sometimes back, you were championing against the government interfering with Karura Forest, yes, where about over 200 acres were allocated for certain activities that you are not comfortable with. Yes. Can you tell us, how has it gone now, the achievements you have made so far concerning the Karura Forest?
Karura Forest had been hived off in the late 80s and early 90s to developers and the who is who in government circles of the day during those times. And most people even have titles today for Karura Forest. So what you see in that 1,300 hectares of forest had been hived off for development to these land grabbers. Professor Wangari Maathai and her colleagues in the Greenbelt Movement stood up strong to fight. She almost lost her life in that struggle. You recall she was wounded in there and she bled almost to death in that place. And the truth of the matter is that if that struggle did not take place, then the movement would have lost irreversibly, because people would not have believed that advocacy can have success. That's a very useful success. If you walk to Karura today, you will find a rehabilitated forest, a completely secure forest because we have fenced it with electric wire and I here want to thank East African breweries very much, because they're the ones, I'm sorry, but they are the ones who gave us the money to do this. But the Karura forest is now open to everyone. Kenyans can enjoy it as their public space. You can come with your children and watch the birds and the monkeys and take a walk to the river. There are 3 rivers that go through Karura forest: Ruaka, Sigiri, Getathuru, and Madare. They all go through that area. So when Kenyans go and enjoy, they must remember it is the work of the Greenbelt movement and Professor Wangari Maathai that really saved that jewel of a forest, so that people in Nairobi don't have to travel to the Aberdares to see a forest. They just need to take a matatu, and in 20 minutes, you are in a natural forest.
Okay. Is there any danger that you see impending? You find that the population is growing, the land is becoming scarce. Do you see a picture where people will decide to encroach even the forests that do exist even now?
Well, that danger exists, but I'm very optimistic that Kenyans will obey the law. One of the few things that the Greenbelt movement has done over the years, and for which the Nobel laureate actually contributed to reaching, to achieving, is tying environmental protection and conservation to sustainable development of our economy, to good governance, to cultures of peace. It's so important for us to link all those together. If people are not peaceful, they will not look after their resources well. If people do not look after their resources sustainably, they will also degrade those resources and therefore cause poverty. If people do not have good governance is very key, because if you have a corrupt, inept government, you see, you can't really do very much, can you? What I'm saying today as we celebrate the World Forestry Day is to tell Kenyans that these resources are yours. If you go in there for short-term gain, because you are hungry, because you have no job, because you want to illegally log, because you want to burn charcoal and get some little money, those are short-term gain. But the long-term consequences are very grave. So I am very optimistic that the laws of this land, particularly the new constitution, will be implemented in a manner that makes every Kenyan a custodian of their forests. Yes.
Your movement holds the Pan-African conferences,
yes,
where you teach people how to make an awareness to the public on the importance of planting trees and conserving the environment.
Yes.
What are the really basic things that you teach a normal mwananchi can get into such conferences and maybe put in practice that at least may take a step further to conserving the environment?
I think the most basic thing is to create personal awareness. I think a lot of us as Kenyans don't know each other. We don't know ourselves. Christians say to know yourself is to know God. You know? Because we are creation of the Almighty. Are we together?
Yeah.
And if you really don't know yourself, you really can't know God. And in the same way, I can paraphrase this, and to know yourself is to know nature. And if you understand nature, you can live with it much, much better. You can treat trees with respect. You can treat the river waters with respect. You can preserve them and conserve them. You can work towards a better, greener, cleaner environment in which we live. You will see.
I presume some of the challenges that you've gone through assault.
Yes.
You are on the forefront trying to prevent the government from
being slapped.
I
remember being slapped by the DC.
Yes, constructed along the river.
Riverbank, yeah.
The DC from the Westlands.
Yeah, she gave me a very good slap on here. But if you are committed to these things,
sure,
you should almost turn the other cheek. There are a lot of people who said, oh, you know, you should do this. But the truth of the matter is that I'll have the last laugh. Sure. Those buildings have been stopped. They are not being built. And I am very confident that if our laws are followed, if corruption and impunity is done away with, that those people will demolish those buildings and leave that ground.
Okay, Professor, by any chance that you just pass somewhere and then there was a gathering of people, maybe someone tells you, can you please address us? What could you tell those people in relation to your course now?
I think I would tell them that one of the few things that, we need to know as Kenyans is that the future of Kenya is in our hands. And that future is dependent on how we guard our environments and how we manage our resources sustainably for the generations to come. And that all that is really dependent on getting the right type of people to govern us. That governance is so essential. You miss and you get people who don't care. And over a period of 5 years, you can destroy what has taken you many years to build. That's one thing. I would also tell them that it is time that we looked for our own solutions. That it is not bad to depend on resources that God gave us as Kenyans. And we shouldn't be looking elsewhere for anything else. If we grew up and our forefathers drank uji from sorghum and millet,
Sure.
I don't see the reason why my child should not eat millet and sorghum.
Yeah.
I think our major problem of food insecurity is because we are ignoring our own foodstuffs. And I'm glad that Kenyans are now beginning to turn around and revisit those issues. That you really don't need to eat rice and white flour and so on, that there are other alternative foods that are much more resilient to climate change, more resilient to weather vagrancies, and therefore easier to grow and to keep. I knew when I was growing up, we ate pumpkins all the time, and there was good food. I don't know who came and told us pumpkins are not good, and yet they grow so easily. Almost anywhere in Kenya you can grow pumpkins, and they are so healthy type of food. So I think to keep our population healthy, we need to revisit our indigenous foods and eat them and grow them and be happy with them, because they do not require the kind of input, very costly inputs, that is going into producing the normal grain you call maize and other vegetables that we are now consuming in very high numbers.
Maybe in 5 years or 5 to 10 years to come, in your course, how do you like to see the picture of Kenya?
I see a picture of Kenya that is much greener than it is now. I would like to see a real concerted effort to reclaim parts of what we call dryland forests that have now been completely decimated in Narok, southern Narok, and up in the north, in Maralal, for example, Samburu, Marsabit. Marsabit used to have one of the most beautiful forests in Kenya, the Marsabit Hill Forest, where the famous Ahmed, the elephant, lived. Yeah? And Ahmed was known all over the world. We should now reclaim Marsabit Forest. And I think if I was the Minister for Forestry and Environment in Kenya, I would make an example of just how we can reclaim Marsabit and make it the way it was only 30, 40 years ago.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate your
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah.
And you plant trees.
Sure.
At CBS.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Professor Njoroge is one of those that has seen landmarks such as Karura Forest survive the scare of extinction in this present age of mindless pollution. But what are you and I doing to help in this cause? Manuya Kevin, GBS.